Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. I never expected that night to change everything. My career, my choices, and especially the person I'd worked beside for over a decade. But some moments sneak up on you when you least expect them, unfolding like a well-rehearsed symphony, each note striking something deep inside. It started as a normal evening. The company's annual gala had just ended, and the city lights shimmered through the wide glass windows of the rooftop venue. The laughter of colleagues still echoed in my ears as I stepped outside, inhaling the crisp evening air, relieved to be away from the noise. My heels pinched slightly, reminders of the long hours spent standing and smiling. Leaving already? I heard a voice behind me and turned to see him. Mark Davidson, my boss for the last 12 years. His silver hair glinted under the streetlights, his sharp suit and composed demeanor, a picture of a man who had built an empire from scratch. At 60, he carried himself with the same unshakable confidence he always had. "Just getting some air," I replied, offering a small smile. "Quite a party," he said, stepping beside me, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. His usual air of authority seemed softened by the glow of the streetlights. It was, but I'll be honest, these events aren't really my thing. I chuckled. "Funny, you host them every year," he smirked. "That's just business." He turned to me. "You, on the other hand, seem to enjoy yourself." I shrugged. "I suppose I've learned how to play the part." He laughed low and genuine, and we stood in comfortable silence, the city humming around us. But in that moment, it felt like it was just the two of us, side by side, away from the formality of the office. Then came the words I wasn't expecting. "I'm not ready to go home yet," he said, a hint of something new in his voice. "Would you care to join me for a drink?" I hesitated. Late-night calls, strategy meetings, those were normal for us. But this felt different. Something unspoken lingered between us, and my pulse quickened. "Sure," I said after a pause. "Why not?" We walked away from the brightly lit downtown, heading toward a quieter corner of the city. Mark led me to a small, intimate lounge, its dim lighting and soft jazz offering a sense of calm. It was timeless, untouched by the world outside. As we settled into a booth, he loosened his tie. It was a gesture I hadn't seen before. He looked at me, really looked at me, as if seeing me in a new light. "You've been with the company a long time," he said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. 12 years, I nodded. "Ever wondered what life might have been like if you'd chosen a different path?" His question caught me off guard. "Are you asking if I regret my choices?" I asked, unable to keep the surprise from my voice. He shook his head. "Not regret. Just curiosity. Do you ever wonder about the roads you didn't take?" I exhaled slowly. "I think we all do at some point, but I've always believed that every decision, every turn we take, leads us exactly where we're meant to be." He smiled. "That's a wise way of looking at things." For the first time in years, we didn't talk about work. We talked about life. He shared stories of the early years, the struggles, the sacrifices. I shared pieces of myself too, things I hadn't talked about in ages. Time blurred as one drink turned into two, then three. Somewhere between the laughter and stories, something shifted between us. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing the back of my hand, hesitant yet searching. I didn't pull away. There was a moment, suspended in time, where everything hung in the balance. "I never told you this," he said softly, "but I've always admired you, not just your work, but you. You have this presence, a way of grounding the world when everything feels chaotic." My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't flattery. It was something deeper, something real. "You've always been the one constant," he continued, and maybe it took me too long to realize just how much that means. I swallowed, unsure how to respond. He wasn't just my boss. He was a man I had respected for years, a man whose opinion had meant more than I had ever admitted. But sitting there in the warmth of the lounge, something had changed. I wasn't thinking about professionalism or authority anymore. I was thinking about the way he looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time, as a woman, not just an employee. "I should probably head home," I said, my voice uncertain. though I didn't want to leave. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Let me walk you. The streets were quieter now, the city settling into its late-night rhythm. We reached my building, lingering at the entrance. Thank you for tonight, he said softly. For listening, I smiled. I could say the same to you. A pause, a hesitation. Then, before I could think better of it, I leaned in slightly. It was one of those moments where the world narrows to just two people. But before anything else could happen, I pulled back. My breath was unsteady. Good night, Mark, I whispered, stepping inside, my heart pounding. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual, my mind tangled in the events of the night before. Mark's touch, the warmth of his hand on mine, the unspoken words. For years, I had seen him only as my boss, a man of authority, distance, and respect. But now, I couldn't stop thinking about him as Mark, the man who had let his guard down and shown me a vulnerability I had never expected. As I walked into the office, I noticed something new in the air, something palpable. When I caught sight of him across the room, our eyes met for the briefest moment. He gave me a small smile, one that only I would notice. It was as if we shared a secret. The day passed in a blur, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that night. Mark seemed different, more present, more engaged. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us.